A young girl from the rural underclass secretly uses a telescope to spy on a returning jewelry tycoon, hoping to climb into high society. The man is not only handsome, but also wealthy and intelligent, so the girl has long been deeply infatuated with him. Because he has been away from home for many years, the man decisively asks his mother during the journey if he can get off and take in the beautiful scenery of his hometown. He then strolls across a vast wilderness that resembles an ocean, only to unknowingly wander into a misty forest. What appears before his eyes is truly astonishing.
Good evening.
Yes.
In the blink of an eye, the girl suddenly disappears. Such a mysterious moment seems to hint at an unexpected encounter shaped by fate. This film is adapted from the novel The Return of the Native by Thomas Hardy. The story takes place in a remote village in northern England. After losing her parents, Eusta comes here to seek refuge with her grandfather. Perhaps because of her striking beauty, she is labeled as a witch by the closed-minded and conservative villagers.
Fire around and a witch doesn't even bother to tend it.
Dare you not say her name? Nobody's saying her name. Or is it bad luck?
Eustacia Voy, I'm not afraid to say her name.
Evil things have happened since she come 2 years ago. Garden crops withered, cows with a bloat.
Look! See there! She's conjured up a wee ghost to feed her fire.
It's no wee ghost. That's my son, Johnny!
Just as everyone is speculating about this, a frightened villager suddenly notices a red-skinned man walking out of the grass. Upon closer inspection, it turns out to be Diggory from the same village. 2 years ago, while working in iron or mining, his skin became covered with iron dust, leading the villagers to call him the Red Man. Today is supposed to be his employer's wedding day, and he has come to inform everyone that there is no need to celebrate anymore, because there was an issue with the approval of the marriage. The wedding has been temporarily cancelled. However, on his way back, Diggory unexpectedly encounters the bride's carriage. The girl inside the wagon is crying. The planned marriage has fallen through, and even the hired driver has run away. Feeling sorry for her, Diggory steps in as a temporary driver and decides to take her home.
Was it just my good fortune you happened along to give me a ride?
I'm the poor one to ask about good fortune.
You have every right to take pleasure in my misfortune.
I could never take pleasure in a day that was bad for you.
Soon, Diggory safely delivers the bride back to her house. The aunt is surprised by his arrival, because he had once pursued her niece, but was rejected by the family. What surprises her even more is that Thomason has not been married after all. Faced with such an unpleasant situation, the fiancé personally comes to apologize, hoping to gain the girl's forgiveness. But in truth, Thomason's aunt has opposed this marriage from the very beginning. The reason is that Damon has always behaved recklessly and has an unpredictable temperament, making it hard for anyone to trust him with a lifelong commitment. Unfortunately, her niece is deeply in love and has lost her sense of judgment, refusing to listen to her aunt's advice. Even now, Thomason remains stubborn and continues to trust Damon completely.
I really do have every intention of completing the marriage.
However, as time passes, Damon keeps making excuses, either claiming the judge is unavailable or that the priest is absent. The wedding that was originally planned keeps being delayed.
He leaves you to sit here like this week after week, with one lame excuse after another. First the magistrate is gone, then the vicar is absent.
Please, Aunt. Damon means to marry me, I know it.
It was hard enough thinking of you as his bride, without having you behave like his widow.
With no resolution in sight. In fact, Damon continues to stall because he still cannot forget Eusta. The two once shared a romantic relationship, and Damon has always wanted to take her away from this place. But for the girl, her feelings for him were only a fleeting passion, not a love that came from deep within her heart.
You know, I find the idea of Paris very exciting.
What is it you really want, Eustacia?
To be loved. To madness.
You can keep me in pain until morning. Kiss me good night.
Suffer only until you get home.
Their meetings and conversations are secretly witnessed by Diggory, who hides nearby. What is this man plotting in his mind? One morning, Eusta lies on the balcony reading, dreaming of a life of aristocratic luxury. Soon, a turning point arrives. Workers hired by her grandfather are discussing CLYM's imminent return home downstairs. He is Thomason's cousin, not only handsome but also cheerful and outgoing. He is also a manager at a jewelry company in Paris, already highly successful at a young age. The more Yusta hears, the more intrigued she becomes, and she quickly develops a fondness for this man she has never even met. Moreover, the fact that he works in Paris, that dazzling world of luxury and indulgence, is exactly the life the girl has always dreamed of. It seems that her imagined life is about to come true, so she begins waiting by the country road every day, afraid of missing any chance to catch a glimpse of him. But the one who arrives is Diggory, the Red Man. The man blocks Yusta's path because he has something to ask of her. Diggory has always liked Thomasin, but unfortunately Thomasin does not feel the same way about him. He feels inferior himself, so he never dares to confess, and instead silently guards Thomasin's happiness from behind. This time he comes to see Yusta to persuade her to give up Damon, so that Damon can marry Thomasin with peace of mind. Because in his view, only when the girl he secretly loves marries the one she wants can his own heart finally be at ease. Diggory's deep emotions surprise Yusta, and she even begins to feel a sense of respect for him. But at this moment, Yusta does not agree to his request, because she has not yet made up her mind. She wants to meet the legendary CLYM first, and then make her choice between the two. She even shares this idea with Damon at night.
I hear Clymio Bright is a young man whose star is on the rise. Well-favored, well-read. Manager of a diamond business in Paris. Grand life in the most glorious city on earth.
And what is that to do with us? Idle talk from ignorant people, Eustacia. I can't live in torment like this. Either tell me yes, or set me free.
Oh no. You must not kiss me until I've made up my mind.
She always acts in a straightforward manner, and perhaps this stubborn pride is exactly why Damon cannot let her go. Not long after, Yusta finally sees the newly returned CLYM through her telescope on the hillside. Just as people have said, CLYM is indeed handsome and dignified. Perhaps because he has been away for many years, CLYM wants to walk alone and take in the beauty of the wilderness of his hometown. However, as he passes through a patch of swirling mist, he suddenly sees a white horse and a beautiful girl standing beside it. They greet each other briefly, and in just a moment, the girl disappears into the mist. This leaves CLYM in a daze, as if it were all a dream, but from that moment on, the girl's beautiful image is deeply imprinted in his mind. Even his mother, whom he has not seen for many years, seems less important than that mysterious girl.
On my way over the heath, just by Mistover, I saw a vision. A maiden so rare in looks. I've been standing here in silence, trying to recall her face, and fearing I'd lose it. She had black hair and pagan eyes.
After hearing his description, his mother immediately thinks of Yusta, and a sense of disdain rises within her, because in her view, a girl like that is simply not worthy of her son. That very evening, his mother plans to hold a welcome banquet for CLYM. At first, the old lady does not invite Yusta, but the girl comes up with a clever idea, perhaps hoping to catch his attention, so she finds an actress who is scheduled to perform at the banquet and begs to take her place, disguising herself as a performer to sneak into the dance. After all, it is hard to refuse a beautiful woman. In the end, the actress agrees to her request on the condition of gently touching Yusta's hand. During the performance at the banquet, Yusta pretends to fall to the ground, when CLYM steps forward to help her up. Her lively and profound gaze successfully captures his attention. At that moment, CLYM realizes that the encounter earlier that day was not an illusion. However, he still does not know that Yusta has a very poor reputation in the village. A shout from his mother startles the girl, causing her to quickly flee the scene. After all, her charm is widely known, especially to a respected lady in the village. On the other side, after sensing the affection CLYM shows her, Yusta becomes quite pleased with herself. She finally decides to break up with Damon and asks Diggory to deliver the breakup letter on her behalf. When Damon receives the letter the next day, he appears extremely dejected and tears it into pieces. A few days later, disheartened by Yusta, Damon proceeds to hold a wedding with Thomasin. Even during the solemn ceremony, the man still glances toward Yusta sitting below from time to time. However, at that moment, a single mother standing behind the girl suddenly attacks Yusta with a sharp object. This frantic woman is named Susan, an extremely conservative Puritan. She has always believed that Yusta is a witch, convinced that her son's illness is somehow connected to her, and on the night of the banquet, she claims to have witnessed Yusta casting some kind of spell to enchant a young performer. The next day, Worried about her, Clym cannot help but go to visit Yusta. The villagers' hostility toward the girl shocks him deeply, but what astonishes him even more is that the reason behind it is such ignorance. Even today, there are still people who believe in something as baseless as witchcraft. In Clym's view, the one truly at fault is not Yusta, but the ignorance of the villagers. So he makes up his mind to open a school here in the future, to educate the people and let the light of knowledge illuminate this closed and dark village. However, when he tries to tell his mother about this plan, he meets strong opposition. She does not want to see her son give up his career in Paris for Yusta.
Oh, you are blinded, Clem.
I want you to meet her. Get to know her.
Meet her? No. No, never. The cruelest thing next to death a mother can suffer. To see an unfit creature taking over the mind and life of her only son.
Don't make me speak to you in a way we will both regret.
Although his mother firmly opposes his closeness to Yusta, Clym is already deeply in love and unable to pull himself away. Nothing can stop him. From that point on, apart from studying books to prepare for opening a school, he spends all his time with Yusta, imagining a beautiful future together. However, during this period, the two actually have differences in their plans for the future. Clym plans to give up his business in Paris and stay here to teach, but the girl hopes that he will take her away from this place and bring her to live in Paris. Soon, the two hold a wedding, under the witness of the priest. Clym places a ring on his wife's finger, savoring the sweetness of the moment. However, on that day, aside from Yusta's grandfather, Clym's mother is nowhere to be seen. It turns out the old lady is weeping painfully by her own window, as if she has lost the son she raised for so many years. As time passes, the dullness of daily life makes Yusta feel increasingly bored. She constantly tries to persuade her husband to take her to Paris to experience the dazzling world, but the man only wants to teach in the countryside for now, and this clearly makes his wife deeply unhappy. At the same time, ever since Yusta married Clym, Damon becomes lost and despondent, as if he has lost something most precious. He grows extremely cold toward his wife and often sneaks out at night to visit Yusta. His wife naturally senses the change in him, so one day, she deliberately seeks out Diggory, this former suitor, and asks him how to keep her husband's heart.
Husbands will play the truant, you know. I thought you might know some way to keep Damon home.
Such hurtful words might have crushed another man long ago, but for Diggory, he always believes that the happiness of the one he loves is his own true happiness. Therefore, he agrees to Thomason's request and does everything he can to fulfill any wish she hopes to achieve. That very night, Diggory drives past Eustace's house as an attempt. Sure enough, he spots Damon lingering outside and peeking in. At first, the man pays no attention and continues staring toward Eustace's window, but at that moment, the sound of a gunshot serves as Diggory's final warning. Damon has no choice but to leave for the time being. Life seems to return to normal. Since Eustace cannot go to Paris for now, she can only try to make do with the present, but some things always take an unexpected turn. After staying up for many consecutive nights and fully devoting himself to preparing teaching materials, Clym severely damages his eyesight. In an instant, everything around him becomes blurred and indistinguishable. He struggles to run outside, urgently calling for his wife to help him, but all signs indicate that his eyes can no longer see anything clearly. The married life that was already far from ideal is now shrouded in an even heavier gloom. Even in such a difficult situation, Eustace still earnestly urges her husband to give up his obsession with teaching and take her to Paris to start a new life. However, Clym only brushes her off with a few casual words each time, which deepens her disappointment. What angers her even more is that due to his severe vision loss, his plan to start a school has to be put on hold. But in order to make a living, following a villager's suggestion, he decides to take on simple jobs like first cutting and gardening. This decision pushes his wife into complete despair. All her dreams of Paris and a beautiful future vanish in an instant. A few days later, the girl changes her former gentle demeanor, and the wife returns to her once free-spirited and unruly self. Dressed in elegant clothes, she goes to a dance in a neighboring village. Clym, who was working at the time, is clearly somewhat displeased with his wife's behavior.
Are you jealous?
Of course I'm jealous. It frightens me to realize other men now take joy in a beauty I can no longer see.
You're my husband, is that not enough?
Only if you are my wife, without regret.
I won't stay long.
In the end, unable to argue with her stubbornness, he can only let her do as she wishes. But unexpectedly, when Yusta arrives at the dance, she meets Damon again. he warmly invites her to dance. At first, the woman hesitates, but Damon explains that since his wife and Clym are cousins, they are practically relatives as well. Even if they appear a little close, it will not invite gossip from others. In the end, under the gaze of everyone, the two hold hands and dance joyfully together. The once dull and lifeless existence is suddenly reignited by this burst of passion, bringing vitality back to the woman. For Yusta at this moment, this kind of passion carries an irresistible temptation, one she cannot refuse.
Eustacia! Well, I'm sorry to hear about Clem. Truly. We all thought he was going to take you off to Paris. Her loss more than yours, I'd say.
Must be going.
I'll walk you home if you want.
On their way home together, they happen to run into Clym and Diggory. Because of his poor eyesight, Clym does not realize that his wife is walking alongside Damon. Although Diggory witnesses everything, he chooses to remain silent at Eustace's subtle signal. However, for the sake of Thomason's happiness, Diggory later goes to the old lady's residence and tactfully tells Clym's mother about what happened. The old lady had already been completely disheartened by her son's affairs and had resolved not to interfere anymore. But after all, Clym is her only child, and this matter also concerns her niece's happiness. So in the end, she decides to go and see Clym. Perhaps all of this is destined. Just as the old lady is on her way, Damon arrives at Eustace's house ahead of time. At that moment, the husband, exhausted from half a day's labor, is napping by the fireplace, completely unaware of what is happening in his own home. Just as the two are whispering sweet words to each other, someone knocks on the door of the house. The woman, trembling with fear, creeps to the window to look, only to discover that it is Clym's mother. While the old lady is waiting, she also notices her, and the two lock eyes in silence, but Eusta refuses to open the door. In truth, she does not dare to open it, because if Damon is discovered openly inside the house, her secret will be completely exposed, so she can only let Damon slip out through the back door first. By the time she finally composes herself and opens the front door, the old lady has already left. What she never expects is that this incident will soon bring her great disaster. Meanwhile, the departing old lady feels a sudden pain in her chest. Perhaps it is because her son has broken her heart, or perhaps it is due to her daughter-in-law's cold indifference. She collapses to the ground on her way home. This scene is witnessed by Susan's son. The boy initially wants to step forward and help, but it is clear that the old lady is already at the end of her strength. Before she dies, she tells the boy about how she was just turned away by her daughter-in-law. After saying this, she closes her eyes forever, sensing that something is terribly wrong. The boy rushes to Clym's house before even answering his mother's questions, and tells him everything. He also reveals that the old lady had been refused entry by his wife. Without asking further questions, Clym immediately rushes to the place where his mother collapsed. At the same time, other villagers arrive as well, holding his mother's body. Clym is overwhelmed with grief and blames himself for being an unfilial son, but everyone understands that although Clym bears some responsibility, the true cause of this tragedy is clearly his wife, Yusta. Not only that, but afterward, Clym also hears from a driver that on the day of the incident, a man was seen running out of his house. Clym instantly concludes that his wife has been unfaithful, or that she has taken a lover. Furious, he storms back home, and the two erupt into their first major argument. Clym accuses his wife of being cold and frivolous. Although Yusta feels some guilt over the old lady's death, she believes she has never done anything to betray her husband. At the same time, she blames him for deceiving her and completely shattering her lifelong dreams. On this matter, the husband indeed deceived his wife, leaving him with nothing to say. Afterward, Yusta leaves the house with her luggage and temporarily moves in with her grandfather. The couple begins living apart. In the days that follow, the woman constantly longs to receive news from her husband, but she never expects him to be so heartless that he does not send even a single letter. This makes Yusta increasingly pessimistic and desperate, even driving her to thoughts of ending her life. Fortunately, her grandfather appears in time and stops her impulsive act. It is not until one day, persuaded by his cousin Thomason, that Clym finally decides to write a letter to his wife, hoping to save their marriage. During this time, he has also been suffering greatly, unable to let go of Yusta in his heart. But unexpectedly, at that very moment, Damon learns of the situation and once again finds Yusta after she has left home. He invites her to leave this place with him. Deeply moved, the woman believes that only this man truly understands her. In order to escape, she even agrees to become his lover in the future. At the same time, they plan to drive to the port that very night and elope to Paris together, but fate intervenes once again. Clym's letter finally arrives. Thinking that Eusta has already gone to sleep, her grandfather leaves the letter on the cabinet. Just after he returns to his room, the woman quietly comes downstairs and hurriedly begins to carry out her escape plan. The sound of the door closing instantly wakes her grandfather. At the same time, Damon is already driving the carriage away. On this stormy night, the wife standing by the window clearly senses that something is wrong. The grandfather, who comes out to the roadside, also catches sight of Damon's departing figure. All these sudden signs indicate that Eusta is about to elope with Damon, so Thomasin quickly goes to inform her cousin Clym, trying to stop their plan, and the truth is exactly as they suspect. They chase after them and soon encounter Damon waiting ahead. On the bridge opposite stands Eusta. She never expects that her husband would also appear here. At this moment, Eusta can neither run away with Damon nor face her husband. Left with no choice, she throws herself into the raging river, ending her short yet dazzling life. But what is unexpected is that the two men who deeply love her cannot bear to see her disappear like this, and they jump into the freezing river one after another. Diggory, who arrives shortly after, also risks his life by jumping into the water to rescue them. However, the current is extremely violent, and the river is filled with jagged rocks, making any rescue nearly impossible. Even saving oneself is incredibly difficult. In the end, out of the 4 people, only Diggory survives. Even so, he nearly loses his life, but as time passes, the unconscious Clym miraculously regains consciousness. It is as if fate shows mercy to this kind man. Meanwhile, Eusta and Damon tragically drown. Afterward, Clym holds his wife's body. Filled with overwhelming guilt, he regrets breaking his promise and failing to take Eusta to Paris. At the end of the story, Diggory eventually marries Thomasin, who has lost her husband. He no longer works in mining and sheds his red-skin disguise. The two are happy smiles on their faces. On the other side, Clym is about to begin his plan to start teaching. He wants to use the fire of civilization to ignite the desolate wilderness, and the light of truth to drive away darkness and ignorance. At that moment, he seems to glimpse Eusta's figure once again, and thus, the film comes to an end. In The Return of the Native, Thomas Hardy uses the heath as a stage to weave a tragedy of desire and fate. Eusta is like a moth drawn to the flame, trying to use marriage as a ladder to escape the closed countryside. Yet she becomes trapped between her own vanity and the constraints of society. Clym carries the ideals of enlightenment, yet under the weight of reality he becomes blind, symbolizing the inability of civilization to penetrate ignorance. The fulfilled ending of Diggory and Thomasin resembles a reward granted by traditional morality to those who remain obedient and restrained. Meanwhile, the rebels are all swallowed by the rushing river. This interplay between illusion and reality reveals Hardy's unflinching gaze at the cruelty of fate. When individual collides with rigid social norms and class barriers, destruction becomes inevitable. The misty forest and the blood-like river in the story form powerful metaphors. Eusta's gaze through the telescope mirrors a modern perspective tearing into traditional society. The Paris she longs for is, in essence, a mirage of early consumerist fantasy. Clym's absurd shift to becoming a gardener after losing his sight hints at the alienation of intellectuals in the pursuit of enlightenment. More thought-provoking is that all the female characters are reduced to vessels of male desire. Eusta's beauty becomes her original sin, and Thomasin's marriage turns into a transaction. The death of the old mother serves as the final judgment upon those who cross the boundaries. This 19th century novel still resonates deeply in modern times. As we chase social mobility, are we also creating new wastelands, when education becomes merely an ornament in a spectacle-driven society? How can the mission of intellectual enlightenment continue? Eusta's tragedy does not lie in vanity, but in a society that refuses to offer lower-class women any path upward beyond marriage. In the end, the flickering flame of civilization on the heath raises a question: is it salvation, or the beginning of a new form of control? Every modern individual chasing the illusion of a glamorous city should see their own dilemma reflected in this story.